Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Something Old, Something New. This time we're going to be comparing EDF 2017 and EDF 2025. Let's get it. Now before you guys start going crazy, I know 2025 isn't the newest one, trust me. It was a pain in the ass to import these guys. Plus, I also know there's the Super Nintendo Earth Defense Force that has nothing to do with it. And the one we do not want to talk about. First things first though, I would like to share a theory and a story behind my theory. Nowadays, a lot of people have seen or heard of EDF, but I have a theory that it takes one person in every group of friends to get that game going. It's not a game that people just picked up and played just for the sake of it off the shelf. There's always a weird story behind how did you play EDF the first time? And, well, mine's no exception. Now let me set the stage for you. Friday afternoon, 2005. Hanging out at my buddy B-Ran's house. We've been farming Dust Devils all day, trying to get that D-chain on the scape. Starting to get hungry. B-Ran's dad rolls in. Sack of Arby's. What's in the bag? Crispy strips? Seasoned curlies. What's more, this man is a genius. This guy goes out of his way to get some Coke. Now we all know that Coke products aren't served at Arby's, so this guy made a second trip to ensure the ultimate feast on this Friday night. Boom, eat the meal, full as ticks, sweet barbecue sauce, delicious time. B-Ran's dad comes back in. Hey, do you boys want to go to Blockbuster? Rent some games. We look to each other. Boom. Boom, of course we do. Stupid question. Now we're at Blockbuster, perusing the shelves. What's new? What's the hot game to play? What's something we can both play at the same time? Mind you, we've been scaping all day, taking turns. Then we see this. EDF 2017. We don't know anything about this game. But you flip the box over, giant robots, giant ants, mech suits, 53 levels. But the big kicker here, co-op 2. We didn't know what we were getting into. Boy, did we get into it. So when it comes to Earth Defense Force, there are two kinds of people. There are people who have played this game and absolutely love and adore the series. And there's people who straight up haven't played this game. That is the only two options. I'm telling you, these games are nothing but just balls to the wall couch co-op fun. With every title in the series, you're pretty much kind of doing the same thing. The aliens, or the Ravengers as you call them, have come down from space, and you are basically tasked to wipe them out with the EDF, the Earth Defense Force. Now you do this with a whole lot of crazy weapons at your arsenal, and it's one of those kind of games where there's multiple difficulties, and the higher the difficulty and the higher the level you're playing on, the crazier the weapons you're going to get, and that basically forms this very fun loop of kill stuff, get crazy weapons, kill more stuff, get crazier weapons. But unlike games like, those kind of like Diablo or something, where all you're really seeing is like bigger numbers, these weapons are insane and they just get crazier and crazier. Of course, when you're playing this game and you're unlocking these crazy weapons, you definitely want to test them out. Luckily, both games and every game in the series so far has had a certain level that's perfect for this. In EDF 2017, that level is Crimson, nothing but red ants that cannot do any ranged attacks, melee only. So you just get waves of giant red ants coming at you and you can test out your weapons. First things first, we definitely have your classic assault rifle and your shotgun. You can't go wrong with these weapons. I mean, basically spray into the crowd, blow them away. Cool thing to note about this game, with the exception of certain weapons that are made with quote-unquote Ravager technology, all of the weapons actually have unlimited ammo. You're only kind of inhibited by your reload time, which is really crucial in planning your moves. Of course, you cannot go wrong with your classic sniper rifle. In fact, in this scene right here, I'm actually using a sniper rifle called the 5 card. It's one of the later ones in the game. In fact, a lot of these weapons are going to be later weapons in the game. But the 5 card really stood out to me because it's basically a sniper shotgun. You shoot 5 rounds at once. I mean, it decimates bosses with large life bars. And of course, to pair along with your sniper rifle,
We have the standard rocket launcher, kind of a dummy missile, if you will. Fires straight, big explosion, big radius of damage, but no tracking capabilities on this. Once again, multiple versions of this in the game. Some are more rapid fire, low damage. Some are one big shot, huge explosion. Kind of take your pick. Then, of course, you have the more lock-on capable rockets, and that would be the missile launcher class weapons. Now, the one I'm showing right now is one of my absolute favorites. It's called the Prominence. There's, of course, many different versions, but the thing that's cool about the Prominence is you fire it, and it doesn't actually lock on until about 10 seconds later. So, basically, the goal of the Prominence is to shoot it straight in the air, kind of fire and forget, switch to a different weapon or do whatever, and then watch it come rain down like seconds later after you forgot about it, and then just blow everything up in a huge blast radius. Along with the missile launchers that shoot one huge missile that kind of tracks out your enemies, you also have something more like this, the Fork 20, which launches 20 missiles that kind of launch like, think Independence Day, and they all converge on one target. Very cool for bosses, and also very good for situations like this where you have a wide wave of enemies. Then you get into the more specialty weapons. Now, this is a combination I personally adore. They have gun turrets in this game. Some of my favorite being these Zexer turrets. They're basically like fully auto machine guns. But then they also have a bunch of different grenade options, my favorite being the Stampede. As you can see, the Stampede launches a shotgun of grenades that just wreak havoc into any wave of enemies. And then you wrap up the stragglers with the Zexer guns, you got a pretty potent combination. Now, something like this works really well in an open area, but cities not so much, but they have other things to take care of those problems as well. Welcome in the bomb class weapons. So these weapons activate basically with a secondary trigger. They have claymore type mines and just regular explosives. And as you can see here, it's great to set a lineup. Works really well in cities in between buildings. And wait for the ants to come to you. Then you just press your little shoulder button and blow them all away. I mean, look, I can go on and on about the weapons in this game, but I have to obviously talk about one final thing, and that is the Genocide Gun. This is back in the day, for some of you people who may be younger, back in the day, games used to actually reward you for beating them rather than reward you for swiping a credit card. And in this game, if you can beat the hardest difficulty, you unlock the Genocide Gun. It basically counts as a rocket launcher, but it is a 1,000-meter explosion radius laser nuke, I guess, to lack of a better word. As you can see here, it utterly decimates anything and basically makes you the default king of the game. Now, this game has a swath of enemies. It starts out simple enough, just ants, black ants that shoot acid, red ants that bite you. But as the game progresses, you get more and more stuff going on. So as you can see here, giant spiders. Now, these are a lot squishier than the ants, easier to kill as far as damage, but they are way harder on you. They shoot these acidic webs that stick to everything. Also, you'll see there's ships later on, crazy drop ships that drop ants, that drop spiders, and eventually drop mechanized robots. Exactly. You have these crazy robots that are all outfitted with different arms, different cannons, different weapons, and I mean, they really kind of keep making more and more of this. You kind of find out that maybe it's not the ants or the spiders, it's actually these alien robots. It's real kind of vague, but really fun. I mean, the whole point of this is just to kind of sit through with your friends and blast stuff. But then, of course, the final challenge is basically the mothership. We have to destroy all the weak points while it's launching little ships at you, and ants and spiders and etc, etc, etc. I mean, this game really has a wide variety of enemies, and it even actually has a couple of pretty cool bosses in it. Along with giant versions of the insects, there are some cool bosses in this game, basically in the form of like a kaiju Godzilla-style monster. This thing is gigantic, has massive claws, fire breath, and then, on top of that, he actually comes back later on. After you kill him, he's been rebuilt by the aliens, and his arms are replaced by gigantic laser cannons. I mean, this game, like I said, is nuts. It's very fun, very cool game to throw down with your friends. Drop it in on a Saturday, Saturday night, couch co-op, just a really solid, fun time.
So after experiencing the masterpiece that was EDF 2017, then this hunk of junk comes out. Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon. Granted, this game was not made by the original people, and it did have one cool thing they added was the class system. But I mean, overall, this game is a pit stop, a speed bump on the journey to EDF 2025. This game takes everything that game wanted to do and blew it out of the water.
Okay, I recorded so much footage for EDF 2025, and not even because, it's it's one of my favorite games ever. I mean, it is, but honestly, I just couldn't stop playing it. So one thing that this game brings to the table that the last one did not have is they have split up, instead of having one main class, into having 4 separate classes: the Ranger, the Fencer, the Wing Diver, and last but not least, my favorite, the Aerator. So I'm going to kind of go through those right now so you can kind of see what you're getting. So the best place for you to start in this game is probably the Ranger if you have already been playing the last one, only because it's what you're going to be used to. You're a standard Ranger, you have no special movements, just your regular running, diagonal rolling, and you have the widest variety of weapons. Basically assault rifles, shotguns, rocket launchers, sniper rifles, everything like I said in the 2017 portion of the video, with the exception of one thing that he can do that most of the other characters can't, is operate vehicles. Now that's actually a really big deal because there's 2 classes that can pilot the vehicles. Now ride-along vehicles everyone can jump in, but vehicles are a big deal in this game, and I'm going to touch on that a lot more on the Aerator, trust me. But the ability to pilot the robots and the tanks and the helicopters is a really, really useful thing to do, especially with the versatility this character has. Then you have the Wing Diver. Now the Wing Diver is kind of a crazy character. All of your weapons are energy based, and also you can fly, obviously. So a cool thing is your flight really lets you get in and out of areas very quickly, but because of that advantage, they basically give you a very low threshold of life. Now just like in the last game and in this game, you can really grind up your armor, which is your life, and eventually become, had to have a ton of life, but still, compared to the other classes, you're going to have very little life here. And one huge disadvantage is your weapons and your flight energy are both shared. So if you're in the middle of flying really high and you shoot like a very powerful weapon that drains all your energy, you're going to fall from the sky like a rock. Now, there is no falling damage or anything, but strategically, it could really, really mess you up. Nothing is worse than being in a big pile of spiders and running out of energy and not being able to fly away to escape. That being said, though, because all of your weapons are energy-based and they have the whole risk-reward thing, she really is a glass cannon. You have some of the most powerful, just raw explosion damage weapons in the game. I mean, granted, it will drain all your energy, leaving you extremely exposed, but I mean, if you're really ready to risk it for the biscuit, you can basically nuke a whole crowd of enemies, easy peasy. It's very cool, very neat concept. Just like the other, the Ranger and your Aerator, you do have 2 weapons, so it's nice to have some variety. But that kind of gets a little bit crazier when you start talking about the Fencer. Now the Fencer is insane. The Fencer is your tank type character. You can actually bring in 2 sets of weapons, so a total of 4 weapons. And wow, you have giant melee weapons. I mean, like a big buster sword or a big crazy hammer fist or even just a giant hammer itself. You have shoulder mounted cannons, missiles that can lock on, giant shotguns, giant Gatling guns, huge flamethrowers. I mean, you have really a lot of versatility with this character. Depending on which weapon you're using, you also get different movement styles. You get boosts, you get large jumping, like boosts in the air. And another thing that's really cool with this character is some of your more high-powered lock-on weapons actually have a tag team effect. Once again, I'm going to be getting to the Aerator in a second because I am very biased to how much I love the Aerator. But the Aerator has certain weapons and certain beacon guns that can provide lock-ons for all the other characters. So you basically shoot a beacon on an enemy, and then you can lock onto that enemy. Now, the cool thing about this is with the Fencer, you have certain high power lock-on weapons that can only be activated with one of these beacons. So the cool thing is you have usually high damage, really good accuracy, and usually a fast reload time with these. The bad thing is, of course, you have to have an Aerator on your team to take advantage of them. So really pushing the couch co-op with this situation. Speaking of co-op, I forgot if I mentioned this or not, but this game has couch co-op, 2 players, but also has online co-op of 4. And what's even better is you can combine the 2 and have you and a buddy sitting on your couch playing together online with 2 other people. It's just a great situation. So I'm incredibly biased as to why I love the Air Raider the most out of all the classes, and here's why. The Air Raider is a very unique class. You're all about support. Now, you do have some guns. They call them like the limpet launchers, and they're basically these mine guns that are triggered separately. So they don't work like a standard gun, but you also have the ability to summon vehicles, summon airstrikes from either battleships, planes, or from space, including satellite lasers that you can guide around. It's insane. A lot of these things, though, especially the vehicles and the ordnances, all have to be earned in the sense that you get X amount of kills and then all of a sudden you can summon a vehicle or summon something. Now, the vehicles are crazy. You have helicopters, you have rocket trucks, you have tanks, you have mobile suits, but then you also have some specialty vehicles that involve multiple pilots. So you can have this huge, mega, like Power Ranger style battle mech that has 4 seats, each one performing a different task. You can have a helicopter or a tank where you have separate guns on the side, basically like a mobile war machine. I mean, it is just crazy the amount of stuff you can do with this class, easily making it one of my favorites. As far as support goes, they also have shield barriers, healing guns. Basically, you can shoot an energy barrier on your allies, or you can shoot it onto a vehicle. And they even have like medical vehicles that when you're riding inside of them will recover your health. Usually I like to play like the big attacker, crazy, fight 'em up kind of characters in games like this. But oh my god, like just the ability to summon giant Wrath of God from space, or just a huge mobile suit with missile launchers and lock-on cannons and Gatling guns. It makes the Air Raider so fun. The only thing that's kind of a bummer with the Air Raider is sometimes it's hard to play as the Air Raider solo because your like big heavy-hitting stuff does rely on getting kills, and sometimes you can kind of get yourself like caught in a rut, i.e. like you summon a robot, you get all the kills, you run out of ammo with the robot, and then you don't have enough to summon another one, but you're by yourself and maybe your other weapon is not conducive to fighting the ants. It's kind of a challenge. It works really well, obviously, with people, but still, definitely like my favorite class in this game. So this game ramps it up when it comes to enemies. Now you have the same basic enemies as in the last game, as in ships, the robots with the guns, drop ships, spiders, all sorts of stuff like that. But they've added so much more. I mean, they have these little dragons. They have a ton of new bosses that we're definitely going to go over in a second. But they also have like different versions of the robots with more varied weapons. They have giant mobile armors that drop more stuff. I mean, just basically take the last game and then just add so much more. I mean, they really went above and beyond with just like, hey, how are we going to make this more fun? How are we going to make this more varied? And because they added so many levels in this game, they really do a great job of ramping up the things to do. So, I mean, you can see they've added a ton of new robots and crazy bosses and stuff. Like, the one thing that kind of always confused me is, like, how come they never added, like, new, like, insects into this game? You know, that's the big thing, is killing giant ants. You don't see many new insects. And, do you guys hear that? What is that? Holy crap, what the hell? Jesus Christ, there's so many of them! Stop! Freaking stop! You can't do anything! Holy crap, jeez! Yeah, there's totally one new enemy, and that is the bees. The bees are insanely horrible. Imagine everything you hated about the spiders, then give them wings, and instead of like the annoying acid webs, give them huge walls of spears they shoot out. These things are a nightmare, and the only thing worse than this is like the boss version. But speaking of bosses, let's go ahead and talk about those guys for a second. So like the last game, there are a plethora of bosses in this one. One thing that really stands out is the fact that just like the last game, they have versions of the enemies that are just gigantic, like a giant bee, a giant dragon, a giant ant. You know, it's kind of a cool thing because like they're usually surrounded by smaller versions of themselves. Basically, like imagine like a gang, and you know they kind of have like their leader. But I mean, some of these enemies are massive enemies, way bigger than they were in the first game. And one level in particular actually pits you against every single different version of the giant insects / dragon, because they actually have a huge giant blue dragon as well. But it's really a crazy thing. I mean, like, you really get to put some of those giant vehicles to the test and some of the more powerful weapons. Basically, though, these boss fights really show that you need to play these games co-op, which you want to anyway. It's definitely fun. But on top of that, like, you specifically probably need 4-player co-op, especially for the higher difficulties. All that aside, though, of course, this game also has unique bosses, and the one that really stands out to me, and I'm not going to spoil too much, because, you know, you really need to check this game out, is this beach level that has this gigantic mech. It's nothing like anything else in the game. It's not like a big version of something that already exists. It's this huge, standalone, gigantic enemy. I mean, the thing's really crazy, and on the higher difficulties, it basically shoots a seizure-inducing blast of light for all of its attacks. Once again, these games are just insane. Both of them are great. But this one is so cool with the fact that you have the 2-player couch co-op, the 4-player online co-op, and the fact that you can kind of mix and match those. Really makes this a great time. But when you're fighting huge bosses, just over-the-top stuff like this, it really kind of like is just a fun, chill-at-home game. It's definitely just an awesome time. I cannot recommend this series enough, and I cannot recommend this game enough.
So my final verdict on these two games, as far as which one wins, it's gonna have to be EDF 2025. I mean, there's like way more levels, the class system, just the outrageous amount of expansion they made, paved the way for the future games, the future of the franchise. It's the way to go. That being said, I highly recommend both. These are some of my favorite games, definitely cult classics. If you've played them, you know what's going on. EDF. That's gonna do it for us today, guys. If you guys liked the video, please like or leave a dislike if you didn't. How did you find out about EDF if you played it? Why don't you throw that down in the comments below? You know, what's your weird story of how you found this game, or if you have played it? What are your thoughts? Other than that, man, if you liked what's going on, please subscribe, and as always, take it easy.